Tuesday, August 31st.
Spinebuster Sports presents The Feast, hosted by Sock Sanchez.
Welcome everyone to The Feast, brought to you by Spinebuster Sports. Next to me as always is Pound Cake. He sometimes goes by Kyle. As with you as always, I'm Socks. Today's menu to include, well, it's going to include our top 10 favorite sports movies of all time, but Kyle, what season is it right now?
It's fantasy football season.
It is fantasy football season, so that's what we're going to talk about. And then Kyle's got a little bit of a surprise for the end for dessert. Let's start, Kyle. You got the list going. Let's talk about some fantasy football.
Well, we're going to dive right in, because what's the most important position in fantasy football, Sox?
Well, typically it's running back, but not for us. It's quarterbacks.
That's right. It's quarterback. As always, coming in at the top of the list this year, Patrick Mahomes, God's gift to quarterbacks.
Hard not to disagree with that, Kyle.
Especially with that beautiful hair and that Kermit the Frog voice.
Yes, and the Texas Tech background.
Yes, for sure. But, I mean, Sox, like I see the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes coming out looking to just burn the earth of the NFL this season.
That's kind of the expectation since he came into the league that first year. You know, number one quarterbacks took us all by hearts. Most people probably picked him in the 6th, 7th, 8th, 10th round or later. If you were in a dynasty draft, that was a killer move for you. But now we have a league that, 6 points are for touchdowns for quarterbacks. So typically our quarterbacks go first or second round. In a standard league, 4 points for touchdowns. Where do you think Mahomes would go?
I'm guessing probably back end of the second, early third round seems like a nice place to take him. I mean, the man's probably going to throw for over 5,000 yards this year. I imagine well over 40 touchdowns. He always keeps the interceptions low, and he just makes good decisions for the most part. They've tightened up the offensive line there in Kansas City to kind of give him more protection after the debacle that they had in the Super Bowl. So I expect Patrick Mahomes to do big things this year, and probably see him playing in February once again.
Most likely. We will, only time will tell. Number 2, who do you got?
I have Kyler Murray of the Arizona Cardinals, a man with a lot to prove this season. That team has a lot to prove in the very, very tough NFC West.
And I've always been a fan, once again, of Texas Tech type offense. Mr. Kingsbury over there, I think, will have a good scheme for him as long as he can stay healthy, still maintain making nice decisions of, sliding, getting out of bounds when he's running. However, his wheels should be an asset to fantasy football managers, I should say. Maybe get some extra touchdowns in there on the ground and hopefully stay away from some fumbles.
Absolutely, and they have loaded him up with weapons around him to bring to fruition what Arizona hired Kingsbury and drafted Kyler Murray for, and that was to make an impact in the NFL. So we will see this season if they can make that big of an impact on the NFC West.
Like I said, the only thing that would cause an issue for me would be his fumbles and then prone to injury. But, 17-game season this year, only time will tell.
Yeah, that's right. Up next, I've got the gunslinger, the man.
Mr. Wyoming.
Mr. Wyoming, getting the wagons together and rolling in Buffalo, Mr. Josh Allen.
Yeah, I think Chris Berman should be happy. He's got a gun for sure. He's got a hell of a wide receiver in Stephon Diggs. He's got other weapons as well. Beasley's kind of on the in and out right now based on some COVID protocols. Running back situation, they should be able to pound the rock a little bit, cause play action, maybe cause a couple rollouts for Josh Allen to get his legs moving. As long as he keeps with his decision-making ability, a hell of a top 3 quarterback in fantasy football.
Absolutely, and also adding Emmanuel Sanders this year, I think, is a low-key asset to them, because we'll see what Beasley ends up doing, whether he gets vaccinated or not. But Emmanuel Sanders has been a weapon everywhere he's went on the sly. So expect big things out of Josh Allen. I expect the Bills to win the AFC East once again this year.
Should be with their defense, should be a sure thing.
Yeah. Number 4, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Thomas Brady.
Ooh.
A lot of people have him ranked lower than this, but it has been proven in the second year of Bruce Arians' system, quarterbacks always do better than the first year. So don't think of Brady's first year in the system as a sample size. Think of like the last month of the season into the playoffs when they were destroying teams and Brady was throwing for 3, 4, 5 touchdowns a game, sometimes in the first half.
That is a valid point. He had a nice ride going into the playoffs and obviously coming out with, his 6th Super Bowl, whatever the hell it is now. Great weapons on the outside of Mike Evans. I think Mike Evans is going to blow up with even more touchdowns as he did last year. As long as Godwin stays healthy, anything can happen with that team.
OJ Howard coming back
big OJ.
this year from injury. Gronk with another year under his belt, dusting it off. Crazy Antonio Brown running routes and sitting in cryo chambers without socks on and all the craziness.
Yep, bring the noise, Central Michigan guy.
Up next, we're going to roll with Lamar Jackson, Baltimore Ravens quarterback with, coming off his MVP season, was a little disappointing during the first half of the season last year and then kind of got it together, dropped a load in the middle of a game and somehow it pieced everything together.
Yeah, sometimes you just got to let your quarterback who has talent like Lamar Jackson run its course and let him do his thing. I think beginning of last year, they were a little soft of how they utilized him. He's got so many weapons now. He's got Rashard Bateman. Mm-hmm. He's got Mark Andrews. His running back Dobbins just did go down, potentially out for the year. There's still going to be a ground and pound team with some play action, but thoughts are that he's going to throw a little bit deeper this year. He's still got Marquise Brown,
Miles Boykin,
the
pride of the Irish.
Yeah, the pride of the Irish. If you didn't know, we're going to talk a lot about Michigan sports and then fortunately Green Bay and Notre Dame sports with Kyle here. Miles Boykin, yeah. So I have him 3rd on my list behind Josh Allen. I actually have Kyle Murray 4th just because of the fumble reason. I would love to see Lamar Jackson throw deep this year, and I think that will just boost him potentially to a top 2, maybe a top quarterback.
Yeah, it would be nice to see. When he uses his legs, those rushing stats just add up really quick for quarterbacks, and is something that you just can't get out of everybody. So if they run, put him at the top of your list, guys.
100%.
All right, next, it's my man out of Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers, angry at the world, ready to throw all the touchdown passes, break records, scorch earth, win the NFC, and go to the Super Bowl.
And still piss him on about his contract in Green Bay.
Yeah, exactly. And hey, let's go out and sign a wide receiver that was good 4 years ago and hasn't done anything since he left Green Bay. But if that's what Rodgers wants, that's what Rodgers gets, and
only if they could have Clay Matthews line up as tight end, I think he'd be happy as a clam.
Oh, absolutely. A lot of things going on in Green Bay this offseason. Nobody really knew whether Rodgers was going to show back up or not. He comes out, does his thing, throwing dimes in practice everywhere you look. And I mean, once again, expect the Packers to come out, win the NFC North, and challenge for the NFC Championship again. But only time will tell. Hopefully Green Bay can keep it together. Everyone relaxes and just lets Mr. Rodgers do what he does.
Yep, and as long as Mr. Jones stays healthy as well, I think that team has a good chance of going very far.
Yeah. Number 7 on my list of top quarterbacks is Russell, the love muscle, Wilson.
It's hard to have somebody like him be, number 7 with all the last several years of putting up numbers like he has, the weapons as he has, and Lockett, now Metcalf being obnoxiously the new, I don't want to say the new Megatron, but holy crap, pretty dang close. And his ability to still scramble, ability to not have a lot of turnovers that will cost you in the fantasy game. Yeah, it's hard to say that he's number 7 because he could easily be top 3.
Yeah. Let Russell cook, Pete Carroll. Let him go out there and do what you let him do during the first 4 or 5 games last season. Let him be the man that you want him to be, and he will deliver for you.
100%.
All right, number 8, coming off an injury from last year, we got Dak Prescott. Horrific injury, real bad broken ankle, but they have a lot of talent on that offense.
Got paid.
In Dallas, and he got paid, so
No distraction there.
yeah. Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, looking for big things out of those guys. Blake Jarwin coming back off an injury. Zeke, after having a down year. we could see good things in Dallas. Plus, they're in the NFC East, and a team that wins four games in the NFC East could possibly go to the playoffs.
CeeDee Lamb, as far as defense goes, it definitely helped that cause, so probably more opportunities for Prescott to throw it. You got to stay healthy. He was probably, I think, the number one fantasy quarterback last year before he got hurt.
Oh, he was on a tear last year before he got hurt.
I hate the Cowboys, but, good for Dak. Once again, like Russell Wilson, one of those guys could potentially, be a top 3 fantasy football quarterback, just depending on all his weapons staying healthy. Ezekiel Elliott maintaining that run game for Dallas.
Absolutely. Coming in at number 9, we got a little second-year quarterback action, a little Justin Herbert coming in,
Love it.
Got lucky last year, a trainer injects Tyrod Taylor and deflates his lung, and Justin Herbert gets thrown in there week 2 and ends up putting on a pretty decent season. Keenan Allen's back, Austin Eckler's healthy, Mike Williams. They got a lot of talent over there in Los Angeles.
Justin Herbert last year in that quarterback class was my favorite. He's got a rifle of his arm. I think he can make good decisions of getting out of the pocket. Maybe not as mobile as somebody like Josh Allen. However, he does got a reliable weapon in Keenan Allen, who's going to catch a lot of balls as long as he stays healthy. I think the ceiling's very high for him. New offense this year, so we'll see how that goes. But number 9, I think, is a solid slot for him.
Yeah. Absolutely. And my number 10, one of my dark horse candidates for the year to have a big season, it's Mr. Matthew Stafford. Change of scenery out there in LA with all the bright lights. Got an offensive-minded coach taking care of him. Got a defense that can keep them in games if he's not playing well. I expect huge things out of Matthew Stafford this year.
I agree. I'd like to see what wide receiver stretches the field for him, whether it be Robert Woods. Is Cooper Kupp just going to be the reliable, as he had in Detroit, Golden Tate type of weapon there? I would like to, I think it'll be I don't think they'll go as deep as much as they did in Detroit, just because in Detroit he was behind all the time. So that's a good pick. I will counter that. I have a sneaky one in Jalen Hurts, being another second-year quarterback, just because of his wheels can be pretty dynamic. Kind of a screwball offense right now in Philly. A lot of stuff going on there. Miles Sanders staying healthy should take a lot of pressure off him, hopefully causing some play-action rollouts. As long as he makes good decisions, I think there could be a good potential for him to have a breakout year.
Yeah, I see big things coming out of Jalen Hurts, too. There are a couple guys we haven't even talked about that aren't going to make the top 10 that could be nice sleepers. Wherever Deshaun Watson ends up landing, it seems that Miami might be in the trade market for him. We'll hear stuff hopefully in the coming days if it happens.
Even somebody like Kirk Cousins, who has weapons on the outside in Minnesota, I don't see them being in a lot of games. I have them, throwing it to Delvin Cook. Delvin Cook's going to pound the rock, as long as they have the opportunity to do that and have a lead. But he does have weapons to throw to. He's got Adam Thielen. He's got Justin Jefferson, who was a rookie last year. So I think he could. He's not a hell of a quarterback that's going to win you games, but in fantasy football, it's all about points. If he can limit some interceptions, keep an eye on him.
Yeah, I feel the same way about Ryan Tannehill in Tennessee. They added Julio Jones. You got A.J. Brown coming off his spectacular rookie year. They'll be pounding the rock with Mr. Derrick Henry and all the things he can do with his big, beefy arms and those tree trunks legs he's got. Big things coming from Ryan Tannehill, and that's a late round pick. You can get him 8th, 9th, 10th round or later.
Yeah, these quarterbacks that are ranked, let's say 5 and beyond, you can get these guys in 5, 6, 7, 8th round. So obviously moving forward, we're going to go into running backs here in a minute. You can slide on a quarterback and kind of maintain and hold off, but those top 3 guys, whether it's Murray, Lamar Jackson, Allen, and Mahomes, I think it's smart to snag them in the 2nd or 3rd round, having the opportunity, depending on where you're drafting and who you can get in that 1st round.
Yeah, you're definitely, if you get one of those top 3 guys, you don't have to worry generally about your quarterback position for the rest of the year. I tend to lean more of a take care of your skill positions early and then draft a couple quarterbacks late that you can play the matchups with. But you can't replace a quarterback that throws for 40 or 50 touchdowns a year. There's no replacing that, or one that runs for 1,000 yards. So draft your quarterbacks, draft them where you feel comfortable at. Mock.
That's what we do.
Yeah, and
And don't pick Jameis Winston.
don't do it. It's going to be rough.
Check out Spinebuster Sports on Facebook and look us up at spinebustersports.com.
Welcome back to the Feast, brought to you by Spinebuster Sports. Kyle, we're talking about fantasy football here. Next group of, position would be running backs. We're going to go right into number one. We all know it's Christian McCaffrey. I'm not even going to look at your list, and I'm assuming that's who you have too.
Yeah, absolutely. Christian McCaffrey, number one. He's going to be catching a lot of passes in Carolina. They got Sam Darnold coming from a terrible situation in the Jets and crazy Adam Gase. Expect Christian McCaffrey to get the rock a lot inside the 10-yard line. Expect him to be throwing the ball, probably have more than 70 receptions this year, and just to stack up those points as long as he can stay healthy.
And the sneaky thing about McCaffrey is, everybody thinks he's, a wide receiver at the running back position. Not necessarily last year because he was hurt, but the year before that, see how many times McCaffrey runs between the tackles. He is a beast. He doesn't mind, going straight up the middle. As long as that offensive line can create those holes for him. And, there's potential on Carolina's defense. I don't think they're going to be a spectacular situation. But coming from behind, you're going to give the ball to the best player on your team. The best player on that team is Christian McCaffrey. So, obviously, the number one choice. Probably number one overall pick overall out of all the players, top 300, if you want to say that.
Yeah, I don't think there's anyone else you can take number one overall if you got that pick. And Christian McCaffrey's not a keeper. You take Christian McCaffrey and you just deal with it.
Yep.
All right.
Pray doesn't get hurt.
Right. Number two, Dalvin Cook, Minnesota Vikings. The man that gets the rock and just produces over and over. It doesn't matter if he come off an injury, and he still is a top 3 running back in the league.
Yeah, 100% there. A couple years ago, he had injury problems. He had that torn, I believe it was a torn knee. Had a rough kind of end of college, I feel like. Off the top of my head, maybe not. Long story short, he does catch a lot of balls. I think that's a very underrated ability that he has. Being in Minnesota, I think they will play behind a lot. However, if they do have a lead, you have a great situation there of just pounding the rock with Cook. That's a great number 2 pick.
Yeah. And you, like you said, he takes the pressure off Kirk Cousins. Like, he's the one that hammers the ball down on the 10-yard line. You might see a little bit of Alexander Madison being thrown around in there just to give him a little bit of a break. But Dalvin Cook should be cooking like he always does up in Minnesota.
Yeah, I think, he's got that potential to have 15 to 20 rushing touchdowns, let alone total touchdowns. So someone to definitely keep an eye on to push McCaffrey for that number 1 spot.
Yeah. Next, I've got Derrick Henry, a man out of Tennessee, just putting up over 2,000 yards on the ground last year. The thing that kind of draws him back why he's not the number 1 pick is he doesn't catch a ton of balls out of the backfield. But when you're running 2,000 yards on the ground, you don't have to catch a bunch of balls out of the backfield.
You don't, because he's also going to be your goal line back. And having Julio Jones coming to, it's not Julio Jones of old. However, having that wide receiver that can stretch the field like him will just open the box a little bit more for Henry, hopefully. Tannehill, controlling the situation and being a pretty damn good quarterback will help that situation as well. You're right about the catches. PPR league, yeah, he's going to slip a little bit. Non-PPR league, you can debate him going number 1 overall, just because another guy that he can get 22 touchdowns, potentially pound the rock.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We've seen what he can do to defensive backs that try to get in his way, and he puts them down and makes them pay. And Derrick Henry is a man.
A man.
And a man in a man's world
Yes.
at that. Number 4, I got a man that helped a lot of people win fantasy championships last year and personally propelled me to my first fantasy championship in one of my leagues, and that is Mr. Alvin Kamara. It's gonna be a rough one for Big Al down in New Orleans. You expect that he'll be getting the ball most of the time, but as we saw a lot last year when Taysom Hill was in, Latavius Murray was getting the ball a ton. And if Taysom Hill is playing, you're probably going to see Kamara's catches out of the backfield go down quite a bit.
I will argue that point just because I don't think Taysom Hill can throw the ball down the field. I think he'll be okay. I think running the ball is going to hurt him the most just because they're going to be behind a lot. So not that he'd run the ball, 160 times a year, get that 700, 800 yards. Receptions are a big thing for him for his fantasy value. We'll see how Jameis Winston goes. We know his track record. We know
The 30 for 30 man.
Yeah, well, he had that LASIK eye surgery, so hopefully he can pinpoint someone.
He can see the crab legs now.
Yeah, we'll see. I like him. I don't know potentially who's next on your list, but one guy that we'll bring up a little bit later, I think will be ahead of him personally. But go on, next up, Kyle.
Next up, Nick Chubb, Cleveland Brown. Chubb's another guy that I think could be higher on this list, but he's got a good pass-catching running back with him there in Cleveland with Kareem Hunt. He doesn't typically catch a lot of balls, but when Nick Chubb has been healthy, he has been productive in Cleveland.
He's kind of like a Derrick Henry 2.0. You know, the cheaper version of that, maybe second round pick, late first round pick. He's still going to pound the rock, to take that pressure off of Baker Mayfield. Who Baker Mayfield, by the way, is going real late in drafts, but I think he's somebody to keep an eye on. He's got a lot of weapons there in Cleveland, as much as I don't like Cleveland. However, Nick Chubb, I agree with pound the rock with him. You do have Kareem Hunt as the third down back, but if you don't have to get to the third down by pounding the rock, Nick Chubb's a huge part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. When he was healthy last year, Nick Chubb produced. There's a reason he's getting drafted in the first round of drafts. Is it back end? Yes, generally, but he's getting drafted in the first round because he produces when he's healthy. So as long as he stays healthy, things should be good for them there in Cleveland. Number 6 on my list, Sox, I've got Ezekiel Elliott coming off a somewhat disappointing season last year there in Dallas. Things were up in the air with quarterbacks. Dak got hurt. They went to Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton got hurt. They went to Ben DiNucci to someone else. Zeke was getting the ball, but when you're stacking 8 guys in the box, it's hard for Zeke to get fed. So
it definitely doesn't have the offensive line that Emmitt Smith had. However, I think he'll have a bounce back season. He's an underrated pass catcher. Dak is back. He's gonna throw the ball down the field a little bit more with Cooper and Lamb there. Hopefully open up some lanes for Ezekiel Elliott. I think he'll have a bounce back here. Definitely potential to be a top 3 running back for fantasy football moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Number 7, another guy coming off an injury, New York Giants, Saquon Barkley. I think Saquon in most drafts is being devalued so much. He's going in a lot of drafts late first, early second, and I understand there's a lot of questions in the air with his injury from last year, but when Saquon's been on the field, he's produced very well for the Giants, regardless of him playing on a bad team.
I believe, there's Kamara, but I believe he is the second best pass-catching running back. I think he is number 2 overall. Now he's going to have a limited work role probably the first several weeks in the season. Wait till week 6 and beyond. I think somebody like Barkley will carry you to a fantasy football season as long as he's healthy. On poor teams with the Giants, he's done it. So I think he's going to have a hell of a comeback year. Just depends on his beginning health at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, and we'll see if Daniel Jones can start making those strides as becoming a better quarterback. They added Kenny Galladay in the offseason. They still got Sterling Shepard, Evan Ingram as a tight end, and they play in the NFC East, like we said. We're going to hit it a lot today and next week. The NFC East is terrible. There isn't really any good teams. The Washington football team is the front runner, and that's a lot to do with their defense.
Yeah, and that could be a huge thing for even Barkley moving forward as that stretch comes going into the playoff season. Keep eye on that. He could probably secure a good chunkier playoff wins later on.
Absolutely. Number 8, you got Mr. Aaron Jones out of Green Bay. The man got paid.
I'm surprised he's not higher on your list, Kyle.
I'm surprised he's not higher on my list too. As high as Dave Matthews eating a cherry pie in a canoe, but Aaron Jones has played very well in Green Bay the last couple seasons. They've Green Bay always keeps a nice committee of running backs going. Mr. A.J. Dillon's going to push Aaron Jones a little bit more, but he wants to stay in Green Bay. He's a guy who wants to be there. That's where he wants to play, and he takes the pressure off Mr. Rodgers. Aaron and Aaron can help each other out a lot in that factor. And plus, it's the NFC North. You got a 50-50 shot if you're playing a division opponent that they're going to have a defense or they're going to be terrible. So,
and I think a lot will be said too is how A.J. Dillon will be serve as a backup. If he struggles early, give Aaron Jones the ball.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, and maybe he'll get some more red zone looks this year. You know, they went to Devontae a lot last year in the red zone, but once you pay a running back like that, you got to use him. There ain't no point in paying him all that money and just letting him sit back there and block. He needs to be used. He needs to get touches, and I see Aaron Jones having a big year. My number 9 is Mr. Austin Eckler coming out of San Diego. A man that's going to catch a lot of balls this season. You know, Justin Herbert's going to be looking to get rid of the ball quickly out of that pocket, and I think Eckler is going to be his safety net right there in the flat.
As long as Keenan Allen is not the first. If Keenan Allen's open, you better go him. But yeah, you're right. Eckler will be a good safety net for him after that first read. Running the ball, I think he's underrated. He's good going outside. He's very speedy back, and you know, being a PPR league, I think the top 10 running back is perfect for him.
Yeah. And then rounding out my top 10, I mean, at this number 10 spot, there's a group of guys that I don't think there's a wrong pick. I'm gonna
Gibson, Taylor, Mixon, Edwards-Helaire, James Robinson now.
David Montgomery,
David Montgomery.
You know, the tail end of David Montgomery's season last year was huge for
DeAndre Swift.
DeAndre Swift, who knows what we're seeing out of him. I'm going to go personally with Jonathan Taylor. He saw the Rock a lot last year. I know they got Carson Wentz there in Indianapolis, and you expect him to throw the ball a little bit more. Michael Pittman could be making some strides as a second-year wide receiver that you can get late. But Jonathan Taylor should have a good season. I know a lot of people have him as a bust this year. It's more based on where he's being drafted at. He's being drafted a lot of times. If somebody wants him, they're taking him in the middle of the first. You know, it might be a little too rich for my blood to take him that early. I like him as a early second round pick. But I mean, there's no doubt that they have a great offensive line in Indianapolis, and Jonathan Taylor should be able to run between the tackles pretty well.
You know, he surprised me last year coming out of Wisconsin. I thought, being a workhorse that he was in college, that, you know, he was going to be a little more fatigued. He proved me wrong. He got the rock a lot. Him and Hines, right? Mm-hmm. Hines. Good 1-2 punch back there. Hines is a good third down running back. Taylor can catch the ball, too. Good running between the tackles. Once again, as long as you can stay healthy with their quarterback situation right now, I feel like beginning of the year, they're going to rely huge on him.
Don't forget about the return of the Mac. Marlon Mack making his comeback after an injury-riddled season last year, and he might be taking a couple carries away from Jonathan Taylor. But I see Marlon Mack also as a trade candidate where a team like, I don't know, maybe the Baltimore Ravens go out and get Marlon Mack to try to take care of the J.K. Dobbins issue now.
It's someone I like to bring up, too, real quick before we move on to wide receivers. Actually, I'm going to say 3. Chris Carson, Seattle, staying healthy, doesn't fumble. Wow. You know, that's the right offense. Depending if, like you said, is going to let Wilson throw the ball. If he doesn't, Carson's huge there. A huge sleeper that I've been hearing about is Javonte Williams out of Denver. You know, probably maybe going a little bit higher now, 4th, 5th round, but someone to think about moving forward. And then last but not least, let's see who I had in my mind. Oh, Josh Jacobs for the Raiders. I think he's very underrated. Depending, you know, he's not going to catch a lot of balls, but he's kind of like a Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb 3.0, 1.3, whatever, 1A, 1B, 1C. I think he's a hell of a running back, and he deserves more carries than what he gets. Maybe he gets a little bit more goal line carries this year. Just keep an eye on him as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna disagree with the Javonte Williams pick. I think, you know, Denver paid Melvin Gordon to be there. I think they're gonna run Melvin Gordon's legs into the ground this year. I think definitely Javonte Williams is a running back of the future. If you were in a dynasty league, I definitely recommend picking him up. But I still think you're gonna see a lot of Melvin Gordon this season.
Yeah,
as well.
You're gonna see a lot of Melvin Gordon on IR, Kyle.
Yeah, that very much possible. It would not surprise me. And my last little sleeper, and not really a sleeper now, is Darrell Henderson for the Rams.
Sonny Michel.
The Rams did make that play for Sonny Michel. I don't, you could see him taking some stuff, but I think they're all in on Darrell Henderson now and giving him a chance to be the man there in L.A. and take care of Matthew Stafford.
Yeah. Fair. Yeah, we'll be right back with the feast. Don't forget about Mike Davis either. Unofficially, wide receivers. Kyle in his top 10 list, and I am disagreeing with hopefully some of these, but go ahead, Kyle.
Well, number one is the man. He's going to get paid soon, and he is going to catch a ton of balls from Mr. Rogers in his neighborhood. It's Davante Adams, Green Bay's number one in your hearts, and number one on the wide receivers of fantasy football this year.
No argument there. He caught a lot of balls. He's Mr. Reliable inside the 20. One of those guys could, get you 12 to probably 18 touchdowns potentially there. He's a beast. Second round pick out of San Diego State, I believe, a couple years back. Really has come into his own, not as a number one pick that Aaron Rodgers always wanted, but thank God that somebody turned out in those secondary rounds for Mr. Rodgers to still be in Green Bay right now.
Yeah, the next Jordy Nelson, if you will, coming in to Green Bay with Davante Adams, except more physical and can create separation in a small area to catch touchdown passes.
Can jump.
Yeah, absolutely. Number two, a guy that takes the top off almost every defense that you see, and he's a guy that can get 3 touchdowns a game easily. It's Mr. Tyreek Hill out of Kansas City.
Once again, no argument there. Probably the greatest weapon on offense. We'll talk about Kelsey being probably the number one tight end. Tyreek Hill is the fastest guy in the league. I would like to see him do that race with Usain Bolt. That is something I'm very interested in. However, like I said, blows the top out of defenses, can move in and out of the slot, go wide. Hard to argue that.
Yeah. And number three, we're going Stefon Diggs, Buffalo Bills. Going to build upon his first season in Buffalo last year. Was a great fantasy option late in the year. I know he's another guy that helped a lot of people win championships when he, I believe it was 2 or 3 touchdowns on Monday night during championship week. I expect him and Josh Allen to build upon what they started last year, and they were one step away from the Super Bowl. Let's see if they can make the crossover and challenge Kansas City.
Got a lot of balls his way. They definitely had some chemistry to start. The talk of the offseason for Buffalo was when they acquired Diggs from Minnesota, thinking, what's going to happen here? Is he a number 2? Is he going to be a number 1? He proved all this wrong, or maybe right, that he is a number 1 wide receiver in Buffalo. Huge weapon. The only thing you can think about now is this year's a new year, a little bit more double teams. However, Diggs being a very, top 5 wide receiver in the league, I don't think that will matter.
Yeah, I think, you're going to see Josh Allen make big strides to become the top-tier quarterback again this year. You're going to see Stefon Diggs, solidify himself as one of those top 3 wide receivers. But, we got a lot of guys that we're going to talk about in these next couple picks that could also jump right up there and take over as top wide receivers of the game.
100%.
Number 4 is a guy that can absolutely be considered one of the best wide receivers in the league, and that's Hopkins out of Arizona. We watched the man, one of the teams that actually beat Buffalo in the regular season last year, with 3 guys on him, go up and get that ball. Like, that was his ball. He was taking it. No one else was taking it, and won them that game late in the season.
I think freak-wise in the NFL, you could talk about Metcalf and how he's, tall, huge, fast. DeAndre Hopkins is probably the most elite talent out of the wide receiver group. One thing I get nervous about with him is they added a couple more things in Arizona. He is getting a little bit older. Is there going to be, is he going to have separation issues, or is he still going to go out there, run his routes, catch every single ball that comes his way? Top 5, situation in fantasy football. Probably not a bad choice there. Probably thinking end of first round, no later than early second. If he's trickling in your second round, probably should snag him.
Yeah, if he's trickling in the second round, you go and you take DeAndre Hopkins and you just worry about whatever you have to deal with later on in the draft. Number 5, a guy who a lot of people are high on. I'm very questionable with him. It's Calvin Ridley out of Atlanta. Atlanta's been one of those teams that they can win 4 games in a season, or they can win 13 games in a season. They're going to put up the same offensive numbers either way.
It's hard to argue that. I think Calvin Ridley has potential, but there was games last year where he disappeared.
Absolutely, but also the games where there was no Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley seemed to
fill that void.
Be the man in those games. So it'll be interesting to see the strides that they take there in Atlanta. You know, Matt Ryan's not getting any younger. They added some talent with Kyle Pitts at tight end.
Yeah, but that's really their only number 2 because other than that, you have Russell Gage.
Russell Gage could be a good late wide receiver to pick up in those double-digit rounds. That could, he's not going to put up numbers every week, but he'd get you a game where he gets in the end zone maybe once, maybe twice, and get you a win that week.
Where do you see Ridley going?
Ridley, man, it's hard to say. We do the keeper leagues, and he's obviously going higher than we normally would with keepers, but I'm going to say probably early to mid-second is a good place to take him.
Oh.
The guy actually next on my list, I like more than Ridley, but he has a questionable quarterback too, and that's Justin Jefferson out of Minnesota. The most prolific wide receiver rookie season ever in the history of NFL. And can he put up the same numbers he put up last year?
He's going to see a lot more action. He's going to see better corners. He's not going to see the number 2, number 3 corner. He's got a great body. You saw the one thing I loved about him coming out of college was that championship game when he just crushed everybody. I think he had over 10 receptions and was catching everything. You were thinking about, Chase and some of these other guys coming out of LSU. And Jefferson's, I think, a huge steal for Minnesota. Definitely had the best year as a rookie wide receiver. Kirk Cousins still your quarterback. Mm-hmm. We talked about that earlier.
Dalvin's still your running back.
Dalvin's still your running back, and he's still got Adam Thielen. You just never know. I think Minnesota's going to be behind a lot, and as long as Jefferson can get past the maybe double teams and still get open and maybe not go as deep as much and be more reliable, 10-yard curls, things like that. I think he could be a top 5, but we'll see.
Yeah, he could make that jump to the top 5. He could, Jefferson, it's so spotty with Kirk Cousins, Delvin Cook. Jefferson can be a guy that makes that. They could be drafted next year in first round, or it could be drafted next year in the 4th round. You really don't know what's going to happen. Thielen is still there. I expect Thielen to be taking a major step back in the offensive production this year. Irv Smith Jr. is finally by himself as a tight end. Kyle Rudolph has left. So if Irv Smith Jr. stays healthy, he could take a little bit away. But, I think it's very evident that Justin Jefferson is the number 1 in Minnesota when it comes to wide receivers. So expect big things out of him. Up next is a man that I very much think could be the next guy to be in that top 3 conversation, and it's DK Metcalf from Seattle. Like we were talking about Derrick Henry, a man in a man's world. DK Metcalf is a man in a man's world.
Yeah, the only thing with being a PPR league is I don't think he's going to catch as many balls as Lockett. Mm-hmm. However, yardage-wise, he's going to have more yards. Touchdown-wise, he's going to have more touchdowns. So that makes up for that, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, being a top 3 wide receiver, as long as they still gradually release the reins for Wilson to throw downfield, why not? He's a grossest thing I've seen since Calvin Johnson, that is.
Yeah, when I see him play, he makes me feel like, oh my God.
Yeah, 100%. Cornerbacks probably cry unless you're 6'2" or taller. But once again, probably a early second round, mid-second round pick. Has a lot of potential. I think he has got a huge ceiling, being that middle tier, top 10 wide receiver.
Yeah, absolutely. And they let Russell cook. DK can get separation in that red zone and catch a lot of balls that would generally go to Chris Carson.
True.
All right, number 8, I'm going to go with Mr. Keenan Allen from the Los Angeles Chargers. The man that was on pace to, I think, catch maybe 150 balls last season. Justin Herbert just peppers Keenan Allen with the football.
Every quarterback has peppered Keenan Allen. As long as he stayed healthy, he's Mr. Reliable with between that 10 and 12 yard mark. He's Mr. First Down. He's the first read, and if he's not open, they're going somewhere else, obviously. But even when he's not open, they're still going to Keenan Allen. Yeah, I like him a lot. I think he, in a PPR league, he's huge. Like you said, he was on pace for over 120 balls last year. Being a longer season, and being Justin Herbert's second year, I think that relationship can grow even further. I like him being a top 5 guy. However, it's Keenan Allen. There's that potential that he can get hurt.
Absolutely, yeah. He's definitely a guy that can make the jump from being, back
10
end.
to 15.
Yeah, 10 to 15
Right.
guy to top 5 guy. Now, age is getting in his way like a little bit. You know, then fantasy football, we're all about the young players, the new guys with the legs still underneath them.
Yeah, he's not going to go over the top, though. He's going to be that mid-range safety net guy that, you know, a lot of crossing routes, and if he can get yards after catch, that will even benefit us more as far as yardage goes on top of those reception points.
Yeah, if you're in a full point PPR league, Keenan Allen can easily be a top 5 wide receiver this year. Number 9, Allen Robinson out of Chicago, a man that for last year was kind of the only receiving threat they had in Chicago, other than a really old Jimmy Graham and, you know, the pride of Notre Dame, Mr. Cole Kmet. But I expect Allen Robinson to have a big year. I do expect Darnell Mooney to make a push on him for targets. You could see Mooney had the 4th most broken tackles last year of all wide receivers, and he was overthrown the ball plenty of times by Mitchell Trubisky. Allen Robinson has great talent. He's proven it time and time again in the NFL. He's kind of a sneaky guy. A lot of people don't really think about Allen Robinson as a top wide receiver in that top 10 area, but when you look at Chicago's offense, everything goes through Allen Robinson.
He was like that in Jacksonville. I have him bumped down only because of the quarterback play there. Now, potentially Justin Fields will start eventually. Yeah, he's got a cannon. He's still a rookie quarterback. You know, he's probably going to look for Allen Robinson a lot, maybe a little bit more of his running backs, maybe Cole Kmet. However, I have a guy on your list that's ahead of him only because his quarterback is that much sweeter, and you brought it up in your little quarterbacks, and that's Mike Evans.
Oh,
he had a hell of a run into the playoffs. He had a hell of a run in the playoffs. He's huge. He still goes deep. He still gets the ball. That relationship, you can tell, was growing. I want to say he had 12, 14 touchdowns last year. Another guy that can get, like Devontae Adams type of situation in the red zone. I mean, he's a beast. He's another man-child. Not as quick as those guys, but he can get up and pinpoint that ball in the red zone. You know, we talk about Gronkowski. Mike Evans is the Tom Brady's Gronkowski.
No, for sure.
So there's that potential to 16 touchdowns this year. I like him. I know we've talked about potential top 5 guys, but like Metcalf, I think he's even ahead of Metcalf in that fact that relationship, he's got Tom Brady, and that relationship grew.
Yeah, he's a big physical guy that can get the ball in the red zone and come down with touchdowns. Now, you know, he was a little soft on the touchdowns last year. He had some injury issues, and as long as he stays healthy, I see Mike Evans being a very big asset to Tom Brady in Tampa. But you can also look at a guy that's going a couple spots behind him when it comes to wide receivers, like Chris Godwin. You know, you could see either one. Chris Godwin could end up getting all the yards, and Mike Evans could end up getting all the touchdowns this year.
Yeah, and that's part of it too. That's why there's always, we see the word potential. You know, there's a lot of weapons in Tampa Bay.
I do have some breaking news. Just came through on my phone. J.K. Dobbins out for the season.
Out for the season with an ACL tear. Yeah.
Adjust your boards as needed. I think pretty much me and Sox had him taken off our board today when there were thoughts this morning that he was going to be out for the season, and Adam Schefter is reporting that MRI confirms J.K. Dobbins suffered season-ending torn ACL. So move Gus Edwards up your boards a little bit.
Gus Bus.
Yeah, you know, you could catch Gus Bus in the 5th or 6th round and kind of...
Even maybe before that, they're a pound the rock team. So, yeah, definitely be conscious of Gus the Bus Edwards.
Yeah, some guys I expect to take big leaps here in the wide receiver category for this next season too, Sox, are guys like Brandon Ayuk from San Francisco, you know, Chase Claypool from Pittsburgh. Those are guys you can get generally. Ayuk's going as high as the 4th round in some leagues, which I think it might be a touch too high for him. But you never know what they're going to do with the quarterback situation out there in San Francisco.
Well, look out in San Francisco too. Look out for Deebo Samuel. I mean, he was a higher rated wide receiver coming out of college. He's got some mitts on him.
Yeah,
and he's a hell of a route runner. So keep an eye on him.
And you might be able to pick up Deebo Samuel in one of those double-digit rounds too. He's been going a little bit late. Everyone thinks he might be a little injury prone, but Ayuk made. Like, there were, in all the sections of the field last season, there were only 2 wide receivers that were 90+% on all sections of the field. One was Devontae Adams. The other one was Brandon Ayuk. And if they keep consistent quarterback play this year, you can see him getting the ball in so many different areas and just racking up receptions and yards.
That's the key. Yeah, I like that being a sleeper. T. Higgins in Cincinnati had a pretty good, solid rookie campaign last year. I think Tyler Boyd's very underrated, being in, depending on what Jamar Chase is going through legally. Tyler Boyd is a hell of a person in that wide receiver, especially in a PPR league. He's going to get a lot of balls thrown his way. One guy that I did select in my fantasy football team, and I'm still curious about being year 2, would be A.J. Brown in Tennessee. Ryan Tannehill is actually a pretty good fantasy football quarterback, and he's going to put up numbers probably close to last year. He had a hell of a late year last year, and a lot of that was because of A.J. Brown. Julio Jones is going to help him out, kind of release some pressure on hopefully him being double teamed this year because he had such a great year last year. But I'm very curious to see how he develops as a wide receiver even more. A lot of sheets out there have him top 10, like 6, 7, 8. It scares the shit out of me. However, a lot of people are saying he's going to have a hell of a year. I'm curious to see how that one goes.
Yeah, A.J. Brown, there's a lot of questions there in Tennessee. If Ryan Tannehill comes out and plays like he's played the last couple of years, I could definitely see A.J. Brown being a first-round pick next year in a lot of drafts. One deep sleeper for me, at least, and we talked about him a little bit already, was Darnell Mooney. You could get him generally in about the 10th round in most drafts. I like him. I think he's going to make big strides this year. He's a second-year wide receiver. That's another thing, is looking from about rounds 5 through rounds 11, second-year wide receivers start making their big jump. A lot of people think it's year 3, Yeah, but if you can draft a guy a second year at one of those and you're in a keeper league,
Sets you up.
Yeah, it sets you up for the next season. So, keep an eye out for guys like
Jalen Reagor.
Jalen Reagor.
Henry Ruggs.
Michael Pittman, Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, Chase Claypool. There are some rookies that I like. Jamar Chase, I think, is going obnoxiously high in drafts. In some drafts, I've seen him go in before the other 2 wide receivers in Cincinnati, and I know he's got that rapport with Joe Burrow that goes down to LSU, but it's still a game. You're still narrowing down the talent pool even deeper from college, and I think there's going to be growing pains. Now, I'm not saying that Jamar Chase isn't going to be a great wide receiver. I just think you always see wide receivers have growing pains when they go from college to the NFL, and I expect him to have some when he's starting out this year. Another kind of really deep sleeper for me that I don't feel is getting any love is Traquan Smith from the New Orleans Saints. No one really knows what's going on with Michael Thomas. I've seen him sliding. I've seen him not being drafted in a lot of drafts, sliding very, very deep. They have to throw the ball to somebody. You can't just throw the ball to Kamara and dabble it down to Adam Troutman a couple times and have that be it. I mean, if anybody could do it, it's probably Sean Payton. But
yeah, I think in the Saints receiving core, I think that's all going to be determined. So I think those guys keep an eye on the waiver wire for. See how the first 1, 2, 3 weeks go. Another guy that's very underrated a lot is Michael Gallup in Dallas. Prescott comes back to his form. You still have Amari Cooper, obviously, is going to stretch the field. You have CeeDee Lamb, who's going to stretch the field and be reliable. But you still have Michael Gallup underneath to have that safety net, which he catches a lot of balls. So somewhere you can get Gallup in the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th round, he could be a good flex play.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll be right back with our top 10 tight ends of the year as well.
Check out Spinebuster Sports on Twitter at SpinebusterSPO1.
Welcome back to the feast, brought to you by Spinebuster Sports. Talking fantasy football here with Pound Cake. I'm Sox. Next up is tight ends, top 10 tight ends. Kyle, we all know who number 1 is. It's going to be Travis Kelce. If you don't have that number 1, I don't know for friends.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody doesn't have Travis Kelce as number 1. He creates such a huge advantage being your top tight end because there's only one, maybe 2 guys that we're going to talk about on this list that can consistently put up the numbers that he puts up every week.
And I don't even think they touch him. I think there's still, a difference of, 2 to 3 points, which, it doesn't seem like a lot, but every single week, that's a lot. when you only have, potentially 3 tight ends that will put up double-digit points for you. Something to think about, if you're lingering in that second, third round area and you're like, oh, these running backs are going, oh, I don't have a top tier wide receiver. Get some of these tight ends.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it helps that, like the great thing about the Kansas City Chiefs is when you have the best tight end, throwing the ball to him is potentially the best quarterback in the league, and the guy taking the top off the defense could possibly be the best wide receiver in the league. It creates some matchups for Travis Kelce that are very advantageous, and he sees a lot of balls thrown his way, he gets a lot of catches, and he sees the ball in the red zone a lot. Next up, number 2, I am the Walrus, Darren Waller for the Las Vegas Raiders. A man that, he was a wide receiver last year. He's a tight end. He's drafted as a tight end. He plays the tight end position. That man is a wide receiver.
He was a wide receiver in college at Georgia Tech. Was kind of brought out of that situation like Calvin, 6'6" guy, has blazing speed. Over time, made him a tight end. Here he is, number 2 ranking overall. Can definitely stretch the field. I don't think any linebacker can really match up with him. Derek Carr is an issue, possibly. But, he put up his numbers last year, and I think it's going to be the same this year.
Well, and Vegas led the league in percentage of targets to the tight end last year, where they had 33% of their passes thrown went to the tight end position last year. And I expect to see a lot more of that this year. Henry Ruggs could take a little bit from him over there in Vegas. But we'll see,
And that's something with Derek Carr, too. We kind of wish over time that, when's he going to start chucking the ball down the field? Now, he hasn't really had all the weapons in the world. Waller, he can still go, that mid-range game, but hopefully Ruggs can help stretch that field for Derek Carr. Thank you. Moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And even Jacobs, if Ruggs can stretch the field, they use Waller in the middle of the field, it'll open it up for Jacobs, and you can see Vegas and John Gruden actually making some strides.
He needs to
get back into it. The AFC West is no joke, especially when you got up-and-coming teams like the Chargers coming out there. Number 3, a guy who was injured last season. He's a personal favorite of mine, big pro wrestling fan. Mr. George loves Austin Kittle.
Very nice, Kyle. Kittle, probably the best tight end, both run blocking and pass receiving in the NFL. Quarterback play is an issue, but when you have quarterback play like San Francisco has, there's going to be a lot of passes thrown to Kittle. He's a huge run-after-catch guy when he gets the ball in his hands. Probably their number 1 option in San Francisco in all positions. As long as, like you said, he stays healthy, definitely a top 3, be number 2 overall as far as tight end goes. Probably looking, like I said, depending on your personality and how you value these top 3 tight ends, I believe he could be a second-round pick and have it be worth your while.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I see him going in the second, early third in some drafts. He's a guy that's going to get a lot of targets. He is probably the number 1 receiving option there in San Francisco. Coming off a little bit of an injury, but still expect a huge year out of him. Number 4 is a guy I don't potentially like that much. He's ranked this purely on potential and the fact that I don't know if the Lions have anyone else to throw to, and that's TJ Hawkinson.
Probably the second best talented tight end as far as run blocking and pass receiving. Another Iowa boy, just like Kittle. A lot of opportunity for him. Everybody on the team and within the league think he is the next big tight end in the league. Potentially another, a top 2 guy. Maybe doesn't stretch the field like Kittle does, or Kelce does, or Waller does. However, in the red zone, if they can make it work with Jared Goff, keep an eye on those touchdowns. He might be a 10 yards per reception type of guy, but keep an eye on those receptions. He might not have like I said, the yardage bulk as those other 3, but someone to keep an eye on because he's got a huge catching ability, and because he can run block so well, he can put a little block on and release. So keep an eye on him.
Yeah, all signs point to him having a big year. There's something about him that I'm not completely sold on yet, but he still comes in at number 4. Number 5 in the rankings, Mark Andrews out of Baltimore. Baltimore's a team that targeted the tight end more than most teams last year. 28% of their balls went to targeted the tight end last year. And Lamar Jackson loves his tight end. It's like his little safety net that he's got.
He's Mr. Consistent. I've had him a couple of years in my fantasy leagues, and yeah, he's not going to put up consistent points, but the weeks when he puts up points will carry your team to wins. So if he can get a little bit more consistency in receiving the ball and yardage, top 5 guy for sure. Those top 3 guys are your maniacs. Then these next 4, 5, 6, 7 tight ends are. Get them while you can because it's a huge drop off.
Yeah, it is a huge drop off, and we're getting to some of these points where the first 3 guys, those are guys that you can play every week and be happy that you played. Like, yeah, are they going to hit every week? Maybe not. Kelsey will hit every week almost, but now we're talking about guys that you got to start playing the matchups. You got to, tight end's a position that you're only going to have 3 guys that you can start every single week. You got to start paying attention, doing the research, and picking your spots. Number 6, I've got Kyle Pitts.
Potential.
But it's purely on potential.
As long as he plays wide receiver. As a tight end's one of the hardest positions in the league to learn. If he's making mistakes playing tight end, he's not going to get a lot of snaps that we all want to see him get. However, if he's lining up outside or even lining up as a slot, not as a tight end in passing situations, yeah, there's a lot of potential there. Probably the fastest tight end in the league based on combine and things like that. However, tight end's a hard position to learn as a rookie. That scares me a little bit. But getting him in round 6, 7, if he falls, I don't think that's a bad thing.
No, if you're getting him around 6 or 7, you take Kyle Pitts because he could be a guy that we're talking about next year in that top 3 rounds.
He has that potential, yeah.
Yeah, he definitely does. Number 7 for me, I got Tyler Higbee. He's got a good quarterback throwing him the ball. All signs point to Higbee taking that step. They got rid of Gerald Everett. Gerald Everett's up in Seattle now. Higbee's going to be the tight end there for the LA Rams, and you should see a decent amount of balls come his way.
Yeah, I have him lower just because he's Tyler Higbee. I think he's just one of those journeyman guys that will get you by, matchup driven rather. I like Logan Thomas out of Washington. They have Fitzmagic there. I watched the couple of preseason games I actually watched. He, being a former quarterback, he is doing a great job of catching the ball. He's a good intermediate route runner, huge safety blanket for Fitzpatrick. I think that's the way to go above Higbee. However, Higbee does have Stafford. Stafford has been throwing the Hawkins in the last couple of years. He has used this tight end in the past, so I think they can go either way probably.
I'm afraid I've got some bad news.
Yes, Sox, I'm afraid I do have some bad news. I don't see Logan Thomas being as good as you do. I think Fitzpatrick, you're going to see him peppering the ball to wide receivers a lot more. Logan Thomas did have a great year last year. I just don't know if he'll be able to repeat the same things that he did in so many of those games last season. But, that's the great thing about fantasy football is we all have our own takes on things, and some of them work and some of them don't.
And I'll agree with that, except I think even with that being said, he'll still be better than Higbee.
Okay. Number 8 for me, I got Bob Tonyan coming from the Green Bay Packers. You're at this point in tight ends. Once you get past those first 5, 6, 7, now they're kind of
Noah Fant, Goddard,
yeah,
Jonnu Smith,
Gesicki,
Irv Smith, Ingram, Hooper, Gronkowski's still out there. Even Cole Kmet,
O.J. Howard, no
matter will come back. Eric Ebron maybe can catch some balls. You still have Zach Ertz. I know he's gotten older, but there's something about him.
Evan Ingram is still being used for the Giants a good
right.
amount. A guy I like late is Ferkser out of Tennessee.
Yep, another one.
Tennessee's always used their tight end really well in the games he played last year when Jonnu Smith wasn't playing. Ferkser looked really good. He helped me catapult to number 2 in our little daily fantasy league that we did last year. Put a little money in my pocket, but
recommendation is once you get, like you said, through that Logan Thomas, Tyler Higbee range, make sure your roster's set before you start dabbling in these tight ends because they're relatively going to be, I believe, all the same down the board. And potentially you're probably going to swap them out for somebody on the waiver wire eventually anyway. So build your roster once you get to that point. Like I said, top 3 tight ends, just because the point differential and your matchup against other tight ends, if you have Kelsey and he's getting 14 points a game and you're facing, Logan Thomas, who's getting 7. That's a 7-point difference. That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge moving forward.
Exactly,
So.
Yeah, as we're wrapping up the fantasy football stuff, if we want to give a couple little tips. My biggest tip for drafting in fantasy is running backs early.
Always.
Take running backs early. Wait on a quarterback. There are some things, if you like a guy a lot and they fall to you and you just can't get away from them, absolutely take it. Make your team, make yourself happy by looking at your fantasy football team every week. Don't make yourself upset, but draft running backs early. Once you get past the 4th round, running backs start becoming kind of scarce. You got a couple guys dabbled in here and there.
Then you're just playing potential and you just want to get handcuffs.
And and wide receiver is so deep this year, and most years, especially now that a lot of leagues are moving to the half point to full point PPR format, you're going to see the wide receiver. There's going to be a lot more wide receivers in the pool to draft. So draft those running backs early. Stack. If you can get a quarterback wide receiver combo, there's nothing wrong with that. Get yourself a good defense. A good defense can win you a game or two. And be active. Can't stress it enough. If you're not active in the waiver wire every single week, you're not going to win. You have to be willing to make moves. You have to be willing to pick up guys. You have to be willing to make trades. Be active in your fantasy football league. Even if it's just getting on a message board and telling Nappy how much he sucks. Be active in your fantasy football league.
Yeah, have fun with it. Fantasy football is all about having fun. Obviously, it's a way to, if you're playing for money, a good way to play. My biggest thing is running backs all day long. But you get to balance that, being in a PPR league, you get to balance that reception versus potential yardage and touchdown guy, especially at the wide receiver position. Something to think about. So, it's all about sometimes personal favorites. Some people want to reach and get their guy. There's nothing wrong with that because this is all about having fun. But definitely get running backs early. People that may know me, I love tight ends early just because I like having a top 2 tight end. I think it makes a huge difference based on that position. Wide receivers are deep this year too. So just something to think about. Tips from us here at the Feast. Appreciate you listening. Next up, we're going to have Kyle here, Mr. Pound Cake, give you some dessert about some news that's happening in the sports entertainment world.
Yes. Last weekend, SummerSlam weekend for WWE, they were in Las Vegas. We got to see a nice little John Cena and his new haircut go up against the tribal chief, the head of the table, Mr. Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns won, as most people expected. Cena taken off for another movie. And then we saw the debut of Mr. Brock Lesnar coming back, nice little new haircut, little blonde beard that looks super awkward. Looks like Dean Ambrose on steroids circa 3 years ago.
Turning face. Face Brock Lesnar should be terrifying to everyone. But most people would sit there and say, WWE comes out, they tell you the Brock Lesnar video was seen 1.5 million times in a 24-hour period on YouTube, and they want you to believe that was the big news of SummerSlam weekend, was Brock Lesnar is back in WWE, and he's coming to challenge Roman Reigns. If you want to see another Lesnar-Reigns match, by all means, get Peacock. It's $10 to watch WWE. Kill yourself on Lesnar-Roman Reigns matches from years past. I recommend WrestleMania 31 where Seth Rollins cashed in because it's probably the greatest WrestleMania moment of all time. But we'll discuss that on another episode of The Feast. But what truly happened last weekend, Friday night on TNT. If you can see Kyle right now, he's sweating and crying at the same time.
When Cult of Personality hit, and you saw CM Punk walk out into a wrestling arena for the first time in 7 years, and you watched that first 15 minutes of that AEW show where the United Center is chanting CM Punk, CM Punk, CM Punk. The man's been gone for pro wrestling for 7 years, and people are still chanting his name. There was so much emotion in that return. And just the business changed that night, and people are going to diehard WWE fans like myself normally will tell you, oh no, it's WWE, oh no, it's WWE. AEW is changing the wrestling business and giving wrestling fans exactly what they want. And that's good wrestling, storylines that we're not just dropping after 2 weeks, and good television to watch. There's blood. There's, the Divas division that is amazing. Their tag team divisions are amazing. They've got good young guys. They've got good veterans. There's a good mix of everything. And now with Punk back, we are going to see matches that we've always wanted to see. We've got CM Punk, Darby Allin next weekend. I hear that, Mr. Sox's favorite wrestler should be making a comeback next weekend too, and we could get that potential Daniel Bryan CM Punk rematch that me and Sox have been waiting for such a long time.
Beard and the best.
But I will tell you right now, as a pro wrestling fan, if you love pro wrestling, quit watching WWE and start watching AEW. It's where the real pro wrestling is happening at.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following. The Catfish Blanco Recycling Center.
We kick all the boxes.
Men and Ranch Strip Club.
It's healthier than depression.
Ron Caputo Meat Tenderizer.
I beat your meat so you don't have to.
Welcome back to the feast, brought to you by Spinebuster Sports. Sox here just to recap our first ever episode. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Hope you listen moving forward. Share, like, comment, all that good stuff. Keep us informed of what you want to possibly hear moving forward. Recap today's episode, talking about fantasy football. Like I said, Mahomes good, Jameis Winston bad. Christian McCaffrey should be number one in your hearts and number one on your stat sheets. Me personally, drafting a top 3 tight end could be huge benefits moving forward in your fantasy football season. And then just in case you didn't know, CM Punk makes Pound Cake very, very emotional. Kyle, finish it up.
Next week, we preview the upcoming NFL season and debut our NASCAR segment, Turn and Left. Make sure to subscribe to us on our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, and share us to all your friends. Thanks for listening, and hopefully you'll give us a listen next week. Bye.